Okay, so it is actually 12:30, and I think there's a few more people that might be joining us, but welcome to all of you that have already done so. It's strange not being able to see you, but welcome to you anyway. Um, I just want to say thank you to all my wonderful colleagues that have joined me today to talk about the SQE. My name's Claire Rankovich. I am the resourcing manager here at Higgs. Been here now for 4 years. And my main role at the moment now, which has changed slightly, is to do all the recruitment for the qualified fee earner roles that we have within the business. But I also do still like to keep in touch with all the early careers things that my colleague Hardeep is now looking after, and she will introduce herself in due course. But so hence me being on this webinar, and I'll now hand over to Hardeep to just briefly introduce herself, and everyone else is going to introduce themselves before we crack on with the actual main body of the discussion.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for taking your time out this afternoon to spend some time with us and get to learn a little bit more about the SQE. My name is Hardeep and I'm the Resource and Inclusion Advisor here at Higgs. I'll be talking to you a little bit more about early careers and sort of my view from a recruitment and an inclusion perspective shortly. I'll just hand the floor over to Latoya to introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So my name is Latoya. I am currently a trainee solicitor at Higgs, and that's via the graduate solicitor apprenticeship route. So I have taken both SQE 1 and SQE 2 and currently awaiting results for SQE 2. But I have been at Higgs since March 2021, and then I started the apprenticeship in March 2022. So I have been here now for 4 years, and the majority of that has been doing the apprenticeship. So I've got various insights and everything that I can share with you today around the SQE, and I will now hand over to Liz.
Thanks, Latoya. Hi, everyone. I'm Liz. I've been at Higgs for 11 years and I look after learning and development for everybody at the firm. So that is everyone, regardless of their role, so whether they're a fee earner or not, and also regardless of their career stage. So from early career all the way up to partner, I make sure that all of the right training opportunities are in place to make sure all of our people can develop and grow.
And my name's Reese. I'm the partnerships manager at the Tyra Lawyer. I support Abby and the team at the Tyra Lawyer with providing opportunities for aspiring solicitors to gain mentorship, work experience, and support from our partnering organizations such as Higgs. And a big thank you to Higgs today for organizing this SQE webinar.
No problem. Thank you very much, everybody, for giving that a brief introduction. So just to kick off, I thought that I would just talk a little bit about Higgs, if you're not aware of who we are and what we do. So we are, in fact, a one-office law firm based in Brierley Hill in the Black Country. We've been in existence for 150 years. This is our 150-year anniversary this year, so there's plenty of exciting things going on to celebrate that fact. Something that we are exceptionally proud of, been serving the community here all that time. Obviously, we have changed and grown and adapted over that time. And I think one of the great things about Higgs is that we are always looking at trying to do things better for our clients and obviously also our people. And we obviously, alongside all the other law firms, have had to adapt and change our perspective and how we do things now that we do have the SQE. We are still in an evolving situation with it, and every day tends to be a bit of a learning curve for things that come along that we're not quite sure how to deal with, but we will get there, and I think it's very much for us to learn alongside those people that actually have to live through it. So thank you to Reese and Latoya in particular for coming and sharing their experiences, because I think it's hugely valuable for you to be able to understand someone else who's actually trodden through that path, and can help you with the challenges that lie ahead. We still continue to do our general training contracts with traditionally the 4 seats, and then we are sort of weaving the SQE into that training program. But as we move along, I think there will be other ways in which we will be supporting people that have done the SQE, and it will really quite depend on the individuals as we kind of move through, and there won't be anybody that will have been doing the LPC. So in terms of us as a firm, we are full service. So we do all areas of law, except for crime and immigration. So if you were to be thinking about, well, what sort of experience do I want to get? What sort of areas of law am I interested in? We have that marvelous advantage of being able to offer all areas of law to our early careers people that join us, for them to really then find their niche, find their specialism that they really enjoy. And I'm really proud of the fact that we do have that as our offering. So I'll hand you over to Hardeep now, who's going to talk a little bit about her role, early careers, and a few other further insights into Higgs.
Hi everyone, thank you, Claire. So as I said, I'm the Resource and Inclusion Advisor here at Higgs. My role focuses on making sure that all of our applicants and students like yourselves from all backgrounds feel supported and feel included as you explore your early careers in law. Now, the legal profession, as we know, is evolving, especially with the SQE and the shift away from the traditional LPC route. But I'm not here to give you the technical breakdown of that. Liz will talk you through all of that later. I work in our recruitment team with Claire, and I'm here to support, as I say, the early careers. And what I see oftentimes is that success isn't always about ticking those traditional boxes. For us, it's very much about potential, attitude, and how people grow in practice through that real world experience. And one of the main entry points, as Claire said, that we offer is our vacation scheme, through which gives students that hands-on experience with us, and that can also lead to a training contract. It's a really good opportunity to give you a real feel for what the firm offers in terms of its culture, its offering in terms of law service. We're a full service law firm, and also give you a chance to demonstrate your potential. I will take the opportunity to let you know that if you are in your penultimate year or in your final year at university, to do have a look at our vacation scheme. Our applications for summer are open until the 10th of May. So something that we have seen at Higgs, and just generally speaking across the wider profession, is the value of internal development. For example, someone who starts as a legal assistant or as a paralegal that shows the right skills, the right attributes, can progress internally. And for some, that might include things like solicitor apprenticeships. And Latoya will speak of her experience about that shortly too. So sometimes starting in a support role can be a really, really smart way to get your foot in the door, especially if you're still building experiences or exploring which area of law you really want to go into. And just to also add, the progression isn't always vertical. It's not always that kind of up and down route that you think about. It's not about going up. It can also be sideways. And it's very much about gaining that broader experience and growing your skill set in different ways too. And that kind of experience can also really help you when it comes to preparing for the SQE or building up your qualifying work experience, all of which we will talk about in due course. And finally, what I'll say is, because recruitment is something that I support and part of my work, what stands out to us in applications and what stands out to us in terms of candidates is when you are genuine. We look for applications that show self-awareness, that show curiosity and a real clear interest in the firm. So we really look for people that align themselves to our values in a sincere way. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for real thought. We're looking for real effort. And those are the things that make a real difference to us. And I just kind of want to acknowledge as well that not everyone's journey into law looks the same. Some people haven't had access to, unpaid internships or going to elite universities or family connections in the profession. And that's okay. And that's not what it's about. We value potential over polish. And we will say this time and time again. We're interested in what you've learned. We're interested in how you've grown, and we're interested in the effort that you've put into your academics and to whatever resources that you've had made available to you. And in that respect, that social mobility part really matters to us as a firm, and it will matter to a lot of people in the industry as well. So part of my role is making sure that we open the door for that particular talent. On that note, I'm going to hand over to Latoya so she can talk you through a little bit about, or in fact, sorry, I'm not sure if it's Liz or Latoya who prefers to go next to talk about either the SQE or their experiences, but I'll hand the floor on regardless, and hopefully you enjoy the rest of the session. There will be some questions at the end. Feel free to drop those in as we go along, and we'll try our best to answer those at that point.
Thank you, Hardeep. That was great. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to just run through just a small amount of slides, just giving a bit of detail around the SQE. So I'll be giving you the facts about what the SQE involves. And then Latoya, it's her lived experience. So I'm really looking forward to hearing, what that actually translates into, how this works in practice, what it feels like, what kind of preparation you need to make for these exams, all of those kind of things. So first of all, an introduction. What is the SQE, the Solicitor's Qualifying Examination? So it's the new centralised assessment process for qualifying as a solicitor in England and Wales. And what I mean by centralised is that it is now an exam that everybody takes. And that's one of the main differences to the previous LPC legal practice course route, whereby you would do your LPC after graduation and you would choose a training provider to study the LPC with. And all of the different training providers had different levels, different standards. They had internal exams. So what the SRA are trying to do is to make it so that everybody is taking the same exam. And what that means is that it's consistent and they can ensure the highest of standards for all aspiring solicitors. One of the other things that the SRA are trying to do with the SQE, apologies for all the acronyms, the SRA is the Solicitors Regulation Authority. The SRA have designed the SQE to increase diversity in the profession, which of course it can only be a great thing. And they're doing this by creating a more open, available and affordable, allegedly affordable route to qualification. They're also trying to make it more flexible. So you can qualify on the SQE through an apprenticeship, and the qualifying work experience opportunities are much wider than they used to be when it was the traditional 2-year training contract experience. So we'll talk a bit more about qualifying work experience later on. So it's Kaplan who is the company that organises all of the administration of the exams. You sit the exam with Kaplan at test centres across the country, and they release the exam results. So now, to qualify as a solicitor, you have to pass the SQE1 and the SQE2, complete the equivalent of 2 years qualifying work experience, and also you need to meet the SRA's character and suitability requirements. So I'm going to go into the detail on the SQE, the exam itself first. So the next slide is going to show us all about what the SQE1 involves. That's if the slides will move. Yeah, I think they have now. Okay, so what is the SQE1? So the SQE1 tests what the SRA refer to as functioning legal knowledge. So this is your knowledge about the law in a certain number of practice areas. And I've listed the practice areas here. You've got functional legal knowledge 1 and functioning legal knowledge 2. And the way they are tested are over 2 separate exams. In the functional legal knowledge 1, we've got business law and practice, dispute, contract, tort, and then the legal systems and the constitutional systems of the law. And in FLK2, we have property, wills and the administration of estates, solicitors' accounts, land law, trusts, and criminal law and practice. Now, what we can see is that is quite a restricted number of practice areas, and there will be whole practice areas that are missing that you might actually be interested in qualifying into. And certainly there's practice areas missing there that we have as a full service law firm. So, for example, employment, personal injury, clinical negligence, family, commercial law. And in the past, on the LPC, you would have had the chance to choose those as elective modules. So you could have, had a bit of say over what your interest was and go into those areas. And unfortunately, that's not available now on the SQE1. So when you study for the SQE1, these are the practice areas that you are studying. The way that they are tested is over 360 single best answer multiple choice questions, and that's over 2 days, 10 hours in total, so 2 5-hour exams. Latoya, how did you find that? Because that sounds pretty heavy going in terms of, the length of the exams.
Yes, it is pretty tough in terms of keeping concentration. And the way the screen looks at the test centre, so you've got your time ticking, you can hide your clock, but I found it better to know how much time I actually had. So they say that you should answer one question in about 1 minute and 15 seconds or something like that. So the pressure is on, but on the day, you'll do 2.5 hours, and that will be 90 questions in that first 2.5 hours. And then you'll go and have a break for about an hour, and then you'll come back to the test centre, and then you'll have a further 90 questions for another 2.5 hours. The time slots for the exams, I was quite fortunate to have morning slots on both my FLK1 and FLK2, but I do know of some people in my cohort through the apprenticeship that had the evening slot, so they didn't actually come out of the test centre until about 10 p.m. And that would be really tough because you'd be stressing in the day thinking, I'll cram loads of revision in, and then you'll go into your exam and then you'll try to, concentrate well into the evening. And I don't know about you, but my brain switches off after a certain time, so that'll be really tough. So I think although it wasn't my experience of having the evening slot, advice would probably be, if you do take these exams and you do get an evening slot, take the morning, take an easy morning, just try and keep yourself as calm as possible, and don't do that last minute cramming of revision, because it actually doesn't do you any justice. I don't know if Reese's got anything to add on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would honestly say it is quite a difficult thing to do, that number of questions in a short period of time, and under quite intense kind of situations and conditions. I did my course through Barbary, and one of the things they did really well in preparing us for was how to actually prepare for these intense conditions. So we were given multiple choice question exercises to do to prepare ourselves for answering questions kind of in an efficient manner. And one thing I would say to anyone who is planning to take the SQE is, Listen to the advice your course providers give you, because they'll teach you how to answer a question under such intense pressure, but also how to identify legal questions, what the problem is in the area of law, so that you're not scrambling when you get thrown the questions. And I think practice makes perfect as well. So practicing doing your answers to these multiple choice practice questions in these exam conditions. So I think a week before I had my first exam for FLK1, I sat in my house. I made sure it was quiet, and I sat there with the clock ticking, and I did my practice questions. And that way, when I did actually get myself into the test center, I didn't have the nerves, or it wasn't something I was familiar with. I was able to answer the questions, and I didn't let the pressure get to me.
And Reese, am I right in thinking that the questions aren't kind of what you'd think as a traditional multiple choice, where there's really obvious wrong answers? Is that right? Are they all kind of
So
right answers? Yeah.
You'll look at the question, and it sometimes even the difference between option A and B may be like may or can is the only word that's changed. So again, with your course provider, they'll teach you how to understand so that you're not tripped up. Because when I first started, I was like, these are all technically correct. But then you realize when you're taught on the course that actually, no, this is the correct answer, and how to spot it when you're doing the questions.
And do they give you kind of strategies if you panic and you're not sure what to answer at all? Do they say just move on, move to the next question?
Yes. So one of the great things about how how Kaplan has set up the exam is that you can go back to questions once you've completed. So you don't hit submit until you've checked. So you can flag a question as I need to come back to this. And I would advise that to someone if you're looking at a question, especially like things like tax and accounting, which are a bit more difficult. You don't want to sit there trying to do a formula if you just don't know what it is. Go get the other ones, especially the easier questions done, and then you can come back. Because at the end of the day, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't want to get yourself into your nerves where you then can't perform well in the rest of your exam.
That's good to know. So there is a little bit of flexibility on the day. Great. Okay. Just going to move on to the SQE2 now. So what the SQE2 tests is the practical legal skills. And these are a series of oral and written assessments over 5 days, 14 hours in total. So the skills that the SRA want to assess at SQE2 level are client interview and attendance notes and legal analysis, advocacy, case and matter analysis, legal research, legal writing, and legal drafting. And these are in an even smaller number of practice areas than the SQE1, but they are practice areas that were covered in the SQE1. So there's not any kind of new knowledge content. And the practice areas are criminal litigation, dispute resolution, property practice, private clients, so wills and intestacy, probate administration and practice, and the business organisations, rules and procedures. So Latoya, I know that you've only just recently completed the SQE2, so it's very fresh in your memory. How did you find it?
I did not find SQE2 as bad as SQE1 in terms of pressure. This pressure was still there, but as you said, Liz, it covers everything that you already cover on the SQE1. So a tip for me would be keep on top of the law. If you take SQE1 and you're awaiting results, keep on top of the law, keep doing the practice questions, because whether it's a pass or fail, you still need to know the law, whether you take an SQE1 again or you're moving on to SQE2. The skill itself, in terms of like your legal research, your legal drafting, and even your interviewing and attendance notes, the skills are quite fairly easy to pick up. But it's much easier to forget the law than it is to forget the skill. Interviewing and advocacy, a lot of candidates panic about that and get into their own head about it. However, I actually found the interviewing and the advocacy was actually the best bit of the SQE2. It was the bit that you don't need to worry about so much. in terms of the nerves and thinking, oh gosh, am I doing this correctly? Legal research, the subjects that you will cover on that aren't actually on the syllabus. So you could get something really random, such as, oh, I don't know, a parking fine, or agricultural land or something like that, and they're not on the syllabus. So you don't actually need to revise anything for your legal research, but you of course do need to know the skill for that. Case and matter analysis, that is more about the law. So they are assessing what do you know about the law. And what I would say is if you don't keep on top of the law, then you'll really actually struggle to actually do the assessment. So my top tip in terms of SQE2 would be to keep on top of the law. Do you have anything to add on that, Reese, sorry?
Yeah, I would say exactly. I echo what Latoya says. Definitely remember that, just because you finish SQE1, don't just be like, oh, great. You need to remember that legal knowledge. And depending on who your course provider is, they'll probably spend the first part of it doing some revision on the law from SQE1. I would just add to that, if there are certain assessments that you're nervous about. So for me, advocacy was a big one because I don't do advocacy when I was working at the firm that I was at the time. Client interviewing, drafting, I felt really comfortable with, but advocacy was the one I was really stressed out about. So I reached out to a barrister that I knew, having instructed her to do work for me, and asked if I could shadow her just to kind of become familiar with some of the skills and, become familiar with just kind of how to present yourself at a hearing with a judge. So try, if you can, if you do know legal professionals or you have a mentor, maybe to see, could I shadow you so that I can kind of see these skills in action? Because I think that takes away a little bit of the kind of scariness or nerves around, what the assessments are actually checking you for, which is to see if you can, communicate, whether you can present, because that's what advocacy is just being able to communicate legal knowledge in a way that kind of makes sense and following a certain chronological order and applying the law to the facts of what you've been told is your client's case. So I think definitely know your legal knowledge, but also if you are nervous about some of the skills that you're being assessed on and you haven't had the opportunity to gain experience through legal practice, see if you can shadow. Or the other thing you can do is there's lots of mock interviews and stuff that you might be provided through your course provider, or also on YouTube. You can find lots of examples of people doing client interviews or advocacy online so that you become familiar with the language that you need to use when presenting in front of a judge or when speaking with a client.
Thank you both. There's some really good top tips there. Okay, just moving on to the last slide. This is all about the qualifying work experience, so the QWE. And QWE, as defined by the SRA, is any experience of providing legal services. So that doesn't have to be paid, that can be unpaid as well. What they say is that QWE must offer you the opportunity to develop some or all of the competencies needed to practice as a solicitor. So that's what they expect QWE to offer you. A top tip for me is to go to the SRA website and have a look at the Statement of Solicitor Competency. That outlines all of the different competencies. They're labelled by letters and by numbers, and that's something that's going to be really useful for you to become familiar with. So you're required to complete 2 years full-time equivalent of QWE. But that is at up to 4 organisations. So you don't have to do 2 years in one place. You can do it at up to 4 different places in varying lengths of time, as long as they all add up to the equivalent of 2 years of full-time work. And crucially, this is one of the main differences between QWE and a training contract, is that QWE can be undertaken at any stage. So this can be before, during or after taking SQE assessments. The way that QWE is signed off is that it is signed off online on the SRA's portal by a qualified solicitor from your place of work, but it doesn't have to be anyone that you've actually worked with. So the following types of experience count as QWE. So a law degree placement, volunteering at a legal advice centre, working as a paralegal, or completing a more traditional training contract. I'm sure there's many more, but Reese, what was your route with QWE?
Yeah, so I started working at a law firm as a consultant paralegal through Flex, and I was then offered full-time 2-year training with them. So I didn't get an official, like traditional training contract the way most people would do, either having done a vacation scheme first. But I kind of was able to turn my paralegal work into an opportunity to gain that qualifying work experience. And I think the advice I would give based on how my experience went is just being honest with your line manager or your training principal about what your goals are. So when I started working as a consultant paralegal for them at Burley Law, I said, I do want to qualify as a solicitor. So when they, had seen me work for a couple of months and were impressed by the work that I did, that's when they were willing to offer me that opportunity to gain my qualifying work experience. So try and use any opportunities you get. I did some volunteering with pro bono clinics and legal charities as well. And, I would always check on the SRA website, but some of that can count towards your QWE as long as you get it signed off by a qualified solicitor.
Thank you. And Latoya, you've come through the apprenticeship route, which again is a different way of getting QWE, isn't it?
So yes, it is. Earlier I said that I joined Higgs in 2021, but I didn't start my apprenticeship until 2022. So I actually applied to Higgs for a paralegal role. And then when I got here, it was sort of the period between me applying, accepting, and then getting here. I think they'd sort of said, "Oh no, this role should look slightly different." So I actually came in as my job title then was a Court of Protection Manager, and Court of Protection, that is in the sort of private client area. Practice area, and that deals with individuals that have lost mental capacity, either through dementia or they've got a brain injury or sort of neurological injuries from birth and things like that. So I worked in that role for a year, and then, as Hardeep said, the firm is all about, growing the talent within and sort of internal growth in terms of your career. But at the outset, I had expressed to Higgs, and I was very honest and said that I wanted to qualify, similar to Reese. And so we had conversations. When I say we, I mean myself and HR had conversations about the possible routes. And I didn't do a law degree, so I did criminology and criminal justice. I hadn't done the graduate diploma in law, and I hadn't done the legal practice course either. So the solicitor's apprenticeship seemed like the perfect route for me. And in terms of qualifying work experience, I've found the benefit of it because with it being an apprenticeship, my hand was almost forced in the type of things that I would do in my training contract, so to speak. So the Solicitors Regulation Authority, they have a competency framework, and that basically sets out what they believe a solicitor should do, and the standards that the solicitor should reach, and all of those types of things. So with my training provider through the apprenticeship, we went through and ticked off each competency and made sure that I had an example of evidence to show that I'd met that competency. And then I compiled a portfolio and I submitted that to the SRA. And it was two years worth of evidence. So you can imagine that file was quite large and very big, and for my poor supervisor at the time to look through and sign off. But it really helped to make sure that I'd ticked all of those points, and I was able to say at the end of it, I feel trained in all of these areas. So it was a good way of making sure that everything was covered, and I had exposure to lots of different things and different types of work. With the apprenticeship, you don't necessarily have to do what is called a seat rotation on the traditional training contract. So you would do 6 months in 4 practice areas on the traditional training contract, and you don't have to do that. However, I asked if I could. It was a bit tactical for me in terms of the practice areas that I chose, because I aligned them to the SQE exam. So I did a seat in personal injury, so that covered off my tort and dispute. Then I did a seat in our business services department, so then that covered off my business practice and contract. Then I went and did a seat in our property team, so that covered off my land and property practice. And then I went back to the private client team, and that covered off my wills and trusts. So the only area really that I didn't have exposure to in the workplace was the criminal stuff. But that's only 1 area out of 5. So I thought, 1 area out of 5, that's not bad going at all. So, and it really paid off, because there were some questions that came up in the exam, and I thought, gosh, if I hadn't have done a seat and had 6 months in that practice area, I wouldn't feel so confident answering this question. So I've had a really good experience of qualifying work experience through the apprenticeship.
And you've been able to put what you've learnt into practice, haven't you? Kind of almost
Yes.
straight away.
Yes. So with the apprenticeship, I had 1 day a week to study. But what that meant was I would study on a Wednesday, and then I'd be able to go into work on the Thursday, and actually put that into practice. And then, if you remember, Claire, at the beginning of the session said that Higgs is a full service law firm, so we do all the practice areas. If I was a little bit stuck on something on the Wednesday, I thought, oh well, I'll go into work with this tomorrow, and I'll ask somebody in that practice area if they could help me, and people did. They took the time out. They'd blocked some time out in their diary to go through things with me, so that I had that full understanding, because sometimes the text in the book is so heavy. And it's really tricky to get your head around things. So to have somebody at work that could sort of break things down to me and explain things to me, it was great.
I think it was a really smart move to request to rotate, because as you say, on an apprenticeship, you don't actually have to rotate departments. And also there was an old rule that you had to do a contentious versus a non-contentious seat, and that doesn't apply with the SQE. But as you say, you were able to align it to the right practice areas, get that experience, and also get exposure to property, which it turned out you really, really loved, and you might not have known that.
Yeah, no, I always thought that I'd qualify into the mental capacity law, because that I'd done that for 7 years before coming to Higgs. So I always thought that was where I was going to end up, and I came to Higgs saying that is where I'd qualify. But yeah, having done a rotation of practice areas, I was able to find something that I just enjoy so much more. It's not that I don't enjoy the mental capacity stuff, but I just enjoy the property stuff more. And I was able to rule out things that didn't quite suit me as well, because you don't know what you don't know until you try it. So you might have an idea of the area of law that you want to go into, But if you do have the opportunity to rotate and try other things, please do so, because you never know. There could be something out there that you enjoy a lot more. It makes you tick, and you feel really confident at it, and you believe that you'll be very good at it. So
Agreed. Thank you, Latoya. Claire, am I okay to hand over to you? I think you were going to do a bit of a Q&A.
Yeah, I think there was just a few things that picked up on the conversation that we've had that might be interesting to hear from Latoya and Reese on those as well. And I guess looking at it from their experience, they have been able to run the SQE, the training element, and doing the exams, etc., in conjunction with actually working. And I think from sort of seeing feedback and results and everything, we all know that the SQE is very, very difficult, and we can't really hide that fact. It's out there in the public domain that it is. But do you really find, or do you really think that the fact that you were able to run them in conjunction, yes, I appreciate probably quite hard going at times with working and studying, but do you think that really benefited you in terms of where you sit now today and can say, actually, coming out the other side, doing the two together and take the advantage of actually having that hands-on practical work experience while you're doing the exams? Do you think that that's kind of stood you in good stead? Latoya?
Yeah, yes, I would agree. I can't disclose obviously what was on the exams because I have signed a non-disclosure agreement. But there were particular things, especially on the SQE2 exam, that I had exposure to time and time again. So it was very familiar to me in the exam. And although we weren't supposed to speak about it, there were other candidates during the break that were speaking about it, and they were saying, I've never even seen that form before. I've never seen that document before.
Yeah.
And I think if I wasn't working as well as doing the learning, I probably wouldn't have seen those things before either. And also my training provider was very good at trying to show us everything at least once, but there's so much to cover. It's not possible really, but they did show us a lot of things so that we at least saw things once before going into the exam, so nothing was a surprise. But if you only see it once and then you've got weeks and weeks of continuous learning, you do forget. So when it comes to exam pressure and exam time and you're only seeing it again for the second time, that can be quite difficult. But working,
having had it in practice and doing it a few times,
it really helped.
Yeah. And what about you, Reese? Did you find that helped you?
Yeah, definitely. So before I started my course in August 2023, and I started working at Burley Law in November 2021. So I had like a decent amount of practice where, I was interviewing clients and drafting documents and doing a lot of the professional conduct stuff, So I think that helped having that foundation. Unlike Higgs, our firm is boutique, so I didn't get all the experience that covered the course content. In fact, because I did IP and commercial was the closest to the kind of business kind of contract stuff. But most of the stuff that I was doing, particularly around private client, was quite new to me. I don't think that put me at a disadvantage, but I definitely think that the having those foundational skills, the soft skills, made sure that I could then focus on the legal knowledge and understanding the specific forms I had to fill out, or how to identify issues within that particular practice area. I think also working while studying full time, it is really hard. And I don't want to lie to anybody on here to say that it was an easy breeze just because I passed those exams the first time. I really had to be very disciplined. I had to cut down a lot on my socializing. I still made sure I did, because obviously you need to be in good mental health. And for me, that's tied to like my friends and family relationships. But I was waking up at 4 a.m. to go to the gym and then studying before work so that my brain was fresh and ready to take in all this legal knowledge. So the advice I would give is, if you are going to be doing the studying alongside working, be prepared for it to be a challenge and for you to have to, really get your head down. The thing I told myself, it's only for a year and a bit. And luckily, I got good results and I was able to qualify. But it's definitely a challenge to do it full time. I'm not going to lie and say that it was a breeze. So
No,
yeah.
I totally get that. And I think the other thing that I would just say, and I hope you both do agree here, is that I think the whatever however you come to the firm, and if you're coming and joining as a paralegal or legal assistant or whatever it might be, and then looking to then do the SQE 1 and 2, it's all about talking to your employer. It's about being honest. It's about having that maybe a little bit of an uncomfortable conversation with them, but it's about making sure that you are straight with them from day one. It's about making sure that they know what your aspirations are, and that that it's not suddenly sprung upon them that you've done the SQE 1 and 2 and all of a sudden you're now qualified, or working towards getting that sign off, and they're completely perplexed by the fact that they didn't even know that you were doing it. I think, the way that it has now been set up, in time, hopefully will do what it's designed to do, which is, give easier access into the legal profession for people to be qualified. But I think you've got to be honest, open, transparent with your employer about where you really want to go, what your personal goals are. If you want to qualify, that you are going to at some point or other do the SQE 1 and 2. And, you never know. It might be that they will then support you in that. They may then pay for you to do the SQE 1 or whatever. But it's about being open and transparent. And the other reason for being open and transparent about it is the fact that, you are going to be going through a tricky time. It's going to be hard work. And there may be days that you don't feel quite so great about things. And, if people around you are there to hold you up, support you, chivvy you along, make you feel a bit better when you're having a bit of a down day, it's absolutely the way to go. And I think don't underestimate, the people around you that in some way, form have gone through exams and everything else. And it's about sharing those experiences, sharing your experience. Don't be shy to do that, because it's so important to know that you've got that support around you, that the firm are there to support you and back you, celebrate the achievements and everything else that goes with it. And just talking about kind of the funding side of things, we all know that it's extremely expensive. And, us as a law firm, Higgs, do provide support, and will pay for SQE 1 and 2 if people join us doing the more traditional route. But we are starting now to see some people that have perhaps already done their SQE 1, so they may be joining us, and then we would look to perhaps support them for their SQE 2. I think, again, what I would absolutely recommend is that you're honest and open with your employer. Talk about it. If the answer is no, it's no. But at least you've asked the question, and any support in terms of the actual funding side of things is going to be welcome, I'm sure, for anybody going down this particular. Obviously doing the SQE and getting support with that has got to be a good thing. Don't know whether, Hardeep, have you got any sort of questions that you perhaps wanted to put to the panel while we're here?
Yeah, of course. I think it's really nice that we've spoken a lot about, kind of growing your own with an employer and the opportunities that could be available there. But actually, Reese and Latoya, I'd love to know from your perspective, if you're coming out of university, you're in your final year, you're a little bit lost, you don't really necessarily have any legal contacts, you don't know how to take that first step into everything, what would you say to someone looking for that qualifying work experience, where to go?
So one of the pieces of advice that I always give to like my mentees and other students that ask me how to get work experience is you can actually start while you're in university. So on the SRA website, one of the things that's listed as potentially working as qualifying work experience is placement during your law program. So when I was at the University of Birmingham, I got a bursary to do 1 month placement at the Support Through Court, which is a charity that helps litigants in person navigate the family and civil courts. And that was really great experience. I am not practicing family law, but I was able to learn client interviewing. I was able to support clients during hearings, whether it was child arrangements, divorce, learning how to fill out court documents and draft particulars of claim. And these are all skills that no matter what area of law you get into, these skills are transferable. I didn't count that time because I ended up staying at Support Through Court for about 2 years, volunteering once a week. But I didn't count that time towards my QWE. But all the skills that I learned were helpful for adding to my CV so that I could get a job as a legal administrator and as a paralegal. But it also enabled me to become comfortable with doing legal tasks. So the advice I'd give is try and get experience while you're in uni. But if you find yourself having graduated with no experience and you haven't been able to get a vacation scheme or a training contract, which is a very common thing because they are quite competitive, if you can try and get some work with like agencies like Flex Legal. So that's how I got my foot in the door with Burley Law. I was onboarded as a consultant paralegal with them and then was put on placement at Burley Law. And my contract for 3 months was then extended to 6 months and then eventually turned into a full-time role. And the other thing to do is, because it's also on the SRI website, is you can't get experience in the UK, you can also try and get experience overseas. So University of Birmingham, when I was there, I got a bursary to go do work in St. Lucia, and I also managed to get some work experience in Greece as well. Again, I didn't count this towards my QWE, but I learned skills that I was able to then put on my CV and helped me get opportunities in the UK. So I would just say be creative. Don't think that your only options are a vacation scheme and training contract. Now with the solicitor's apprenticeship and qualifying through paralegaling and legal assistant, there's so many opportunities. So even if you apply to a job at a company where you're an administrator, which is what I did when I graduated, that then turned into a legal admin job, you can find ways to flex or turn something into an opportunity that will qualify for QWE.
Thank you. And what about you, Latoya? Do you have anything on that point?
Yes, so I had a very different experience at university in that the information and sort of resources weren't as forthcoming as Reese's sort of experience. I don't know whether that was just because of the time. So I was at uni in 2009 to 2012, and there just wasn't much out there. But after graduating, I just had a year off just to think about where to go, what to do. And then I went full time at my part-time job, and that was just in fashion retail. But then I started to apply for admin jobs, but in the sort of legal industry. So I ended up getting an administrative role in the Ministry of Justice. And then I was there for 7 years after getting the admin role. But within that 7 years, I had sort of various roles. So I was a litigation support officer, and then I became the litigation support manager, and then I became the operational delivery manager. So I was reporting directly to the deputy head of legal at the Ministry of Justice. So I had gained a lot of skills before coming to Higgs. And it took me a while to get here in terms of my training and everything, but I believe that nothing happens before its time. So I just let let the universe do its thing, and didn't sort of pressure myself in terms of time and my age and all of those types of things. But I think where I'm going with it is going at the entry level jobs, and what we call at Higgs those early careers. So whether it's applying for our document solutions assistant role, our legal assistant roles, and then even our paralegal roles, going at the entry level jobs, get your foot in the door, have the honest conversations like Claire was saying, and you will find that you will get there in the end.
That's great. Thank you so much. I think the message to take away from that is to start where you can, stay curious, and the path will shape itself as you go along.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Claire, anything else you would like to add at this point?
I just was going to ask Latoya and Reese one final question, which was, what would be your sort of top 3 tips for anybody looking at going ahead and signing on the dotted line to start off their SQE?
I guess I'll go first. So yeah, my first tip would be, really ask yourself why you want to become a solicitor. I think that was what kind of kept me going, no matter what the challenges were. I've wanted to be a lawyer since I was 9. I thought I was going to be a human rights lawyer. Then it changed to me wanting to do family, and I went all over the place, but then eventually landed on IP and commercial. But what always stayed constant was my purpose for wanting to become a lawyer. And that is because I wanted to help people. And that drive, that purpose is what kept me going through law school, when I had lots of deadlines and papers and late nights, when I, had to struggle through SQE while I was working full time, during, exam week, when I was stressed out and asking myself, why did I do this? I always remembered it was because I want to help people, and that kept me going. So understand what your underlying purpose is and let that be kind of the beacon that guides you throughout the whole process. Second would be kind of what I just said earlier, just be creative in terms of getting opportunities to work in the legal industry. If you're applying for vacation schemes and training contracts and it's not working out for you, that's not the end of your road. And I think understanding that most people qualify at 30. So like Latoya said, it's, you may see someone who's 21 and qualified, but that's not your journey and your path, and that's okay. But try and do what you can, use the resources you have to make opportunities for yourself. The third is, and this might kind of seem a bit off, is find joy outside of work in your career. Don't let becoming a solicitor be your only identity. I think what helped me find IP and commercial was I'm an artist first, so I love to draw, I love to paint, and being able to work in an area of law where I'm able to support creatives is fantastic for me. I love it. So I'm a lawyer and I'm a solicitor, but at the end of the day, I'm also a human being who has interests and hobbies. And when you're going into firms and interviewing, they want to get to know you as the person. Anybody can have a first-class degree, or anybody can be able to cite Lord Sumption or whatever, but not everyone is going to be able to have that human connection that's going to make them really excel as a solicitor. So know who you are and find joy outside of work, and bring that joy into your practice as you work as a solicitor.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much. I absolutely agree wholeheartedly with that. And, it goes back to, it's about you as a person, and really making sure that you bring your own personality to the legal profession, I think, really, isn't it? What about you, Latoya?
So my first tip would be to make sure it's what you really want to do. Because it is tough. So like Reese was saying, there are times where you're thinking, why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself through it? And I did meet some candidates during my exams where they didn't actually really want to be a lawyer, but they were taking the SQE, which was just crazy to me. But make sure it's what you really want to do, because you do need to be disciplined in terms of your time and everything. The other thing other tip, so second tip would be timings. Make sure that the timing is correct. And I know people say, well, when is the right time? If I don't do it now, I'll never do it. But for me, when I finally took the plunge and thought, you know, I'm going to jump ship from Ministry of Justice into private practice, and I'm really going to go for this, was because what was going on in my life at that time, it felt right. And I knew that I'd be able to have the time to dedicate to the SQE, the studying, and alongside working. And then my third tip would be just believe in yourself. Don't listen to all of the background noise. Don't go on all of those sort of online group chat things where everyone's saying how horrible it is and everybody fails it. Many people do fail it. I failed it. I failed the SQE one on the first attempt and I passed on my second attempt. It is difficult, but it's supposed to be difficult. But at the end of the day, there are many people that have passed it. So it is doable, and there are a number of lawyers that have now qualified through this route. So it can be done. Yes, it's difficult, but it can be done. So believe in yourself.
On that note, no, that's absolutely brilliant. I wholeheartedly agree. Again, with all your three top tips as well, Latoya, it's been is fantastic. So we've actually come to the end, and I've so thoroughly enjoyed this. It's been lovely talking to all of you. Thank you so much to Liz for putting together such a brilliant and straightforward and easy to understand presentation in terms of the minefield that is the SQE. Thank you so much, Hardy, for giving a little bit of an understanding about what we're looking for in terms of our early careers people and what's important to us here at Higgs. Some great insights there. And Reese and Latoya, thank you so much for just sharing your experiences. I really hope that people have taken something from this. We've given them some pointers and some words of wisdom that you've both shared. Yeah, thank you, everybody. I hope that you've really enjoyed what we've had to tell you on this webinar. And thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.